Hey, listeners, welcome to the Product Hunt podcast. I am joined today by a new co-host, Jason Levin. Jason is the voice behind the Product Hunt Twitter. Jason, you want to say hi?
Yo, what's going on? Sup, nerds?
And Aaron O'Leary. I have tried to kick Aaron out of here. If you recall, last week I said that he would be tuning out a little bit to focus on his newsletter, but I just can't seem to get rid of him.
Yeah, hey everyone. You probably recognize me by my accent. I hope at least 10% of you can understand me at this point.
Yeah, I mean, maybe 33% in this room, because I certainly can.
Well, we can add subtitles.
Yeah, it'll just be like incoherent.
Angry Irish, angry Irish cursing man who wants a Porsche.
Well, Aaron and Jason are here with me today to go over some of the products that caught our attention over the last few weeks on Product Hunt. We're going to talk about an Eclipse Map because we got an eclipse coming up, a really simple tool to help you make sure your battery is always charged, and a new Super Reminders app. Jason's going to do his best to convince me to leave Apple Notes and Apple Reminders. So let's get into it. There is an eclipse coming up on April 8th. And it's a big deal. You're not going to get a chance to see a total solar eclipse in the US, in the contiguous US, until 2044. It's the only time you can look at the sun without a special filter or glasses, assuming that you are in what's called the path of totality, meaning that you're going to see the full eclipse. 43 million people will be able to see the entire eclipse. 635 million people will be able to watch at least part of the moon obstructed. And so this product is called the Eclipse Map. It's this really cool tool that lets you see everything about the eclipse from wherever you are. So it tells you details about how much of the sun you're going to see obstructed, things like cloud cover, events in your area. And it was launched by a couple makers at the Eclipse Company in partnership with the Planetary Society. Yeah, these people basically know eclipses, right? They knew all of the details that you're going to want to know. So for example, I looked up my location in Denver. I'm going to put in my zip code, and you can see that it shows me that I'm going to see 65% coverage of the eclipse, which is pretty cool. Like, yeah, that's more than 0.5% of the sun that I'm going to see eclipsed. You can see how long I'm going to be able to see it for, because in the past, when there's been an eclipse, I'm like rushing outside, be like, is this even relevant to me? Am I going to see anything? You can see the sun's position. And if you are in the path of totality, you'll also be able to see things like events in your area. There's going to be fun events. If you're into astronomy and maybe even astrology, a lot of cool things to do. And if you are a photographer, for example, you might be interested in cloud cover and light pollution. I'm right here in the city of Denver, so there is going to be a lot of light pollution. But if I were to go up to the mountains, where is there a good place to take photos from? So I'm impressed with the detail that the guys at the Planetary Society have put into this map. It's just one of the cool things that you can see on Product Hunt.
This is so cool. I really have had no idea this existed. Had no clue where to find the eclipse. I never know when it's coming. It just like all of a sudden happens. Like, I've not been following the eclipse news.
I think I've seen like one eclipse in my whole life. We don't really get to see them a lot where I am. I live close to maybe 3,000 miles from any totality area, and I'm still obsessed. I'm living vicariously through this map.
Could you be obsessed because you turn into a werewolf, potentially?
Awesome.
Can I share my screen real quick? This made me realize something.
Yeah.
Are you accusing Aaron of being Professor Lupin?
I am. He is the Professor Lupin of Product Hunt.
That's the resemblance is actually pretty uncanny.
So when the eclipse comes, you turn into a werewolf. Is this right? The truth is out.
I've been like compared to like 3 people. Another one, especially one had like much longer hair, was Shaggy from Scooby-Doo. I don't know if they meant the live action one or the cartoon one, but I'd kind of take either one. I feel I
see Shaggy.
That. Yeah, right.
Yeah. I see that one too, but I mean, Professor Lupin is it for me now. That's
it. All right. Want me to share my app of the week?
Let's do it.
Let me convince all the haters out there the Apple Notes enthusiasts like Aaron, the reminders enthusiasts. So Superlist is a new reminders app that launched on Product Hunt a few weeks ago. I've been on it since day one, and I absolutely love it. So everything starts here with your inbox. And what's cool about Superlist is it is a reminders app with integrations. So no other reminders app has integrations. Literally, these all came from my email. So when a certain podcast, one of my favorite podcasts called Founders Podcast, comes out, I have an email that's I created an automation that sends the podcast to Superlist. So I have it in reminders. That way I could be like, all right, I know I need to listen to this to then maybe go make some tweets off of it. Or say my fiance wants to remind me something about our wedding. So she can email task@superlist.com or whatever, and it shows up in my inbox. So make appointment, right? Or maybe say I want to create a new task and just write tweet about podcasts, right? I could do that. And then you could drag it. Oh, a but. I spelled it like a Canadian. I could just drag that over to Product Hunt, right? And boom, right? So all my different, like, for somebody like me who works on multiple businesses and is a crazy ADHD brain, I have like a lot of different lists, and it really helps. So this is Cyber Patterns, my newsletter. I have my personal, I have like chores, I have new ideas for Twitter. I have, when I write a good tweet, I could schedule it from Tweet Hunter and then have an automation send it over here. That way I know to repost it in 6 months, right? And so it's really powerful. It is the super reminders app. It's called Superlist. I'm obsessed with it. It's not perfect. Don't get me wrong. They're still perfecting it, but I love it. And I think it's what reminders apps are meant to be.
It is a new app, right?
Like only 3 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing I covered in the newsletter, actually.
Have I convinced you to switch over?
So I will say a lot of this app does seem to go with my workflow. Honestly, I'm kind of embarrassed to share like how terrible my workflow is. Like sometimes I will even just write notes and emails to be able to get to them later. Being able to email myself, like that's pretty sweet. Does it come with a mobile app? Because I think you're on desktop.
Yeah, it comes with a mobile app, which is pretty sick. And everything integrates. For the last like 3 years, I've been running all my business, all my work, just emailing myself reminders and scheduling out emails, like absolutely ridiculous, like an idiot. And so for me, this is just a huge upgrade. Everything's all in one place. I think it really like only makes sense if you are working like in a lot of different systems or have a lot of different projects. That way you could kind of just remind yourself of all sorts of stuff. I don't think like everybody should use it. I think it's for people like ourselves who are working in like tech or knowledge workers, quote unquote, who are laptop workers like ourselves. I don't think like a random person, I don't think everybody needs it, is what I'm saying. It's like Superlist, right? Superhuman isn't for everyone. It's for superhumans, right? So I think Superlist is for the super reminders people, the super productive. That's where my head goes with it, at least.
That feels like a challenge, Jason. Are you going to be super productive and superhuman?
Definitely going to be trying. But I don't know. I think it's important part of the product positioning is like superhuman. It's not email for everyone, right? And I think Superlist is similar, where it's like not everybody needs a reminders app with integrations. And I think it's smart to exclude some people, or that way you could focus on your core audience.
The way you're using it also reminded me of something that'd be really good for like consultants or agencies or people with multiple clients, which I know you have other projects that you're working on. So the way that you can just kind of drop things and drag things into different lists and projects feels good. One feature that I use a lot with Apple Notes is like shared notes. So there's just something to the ease of like other Apple users being able to share with that, which is almost like super annoying, right? For other startups and makers. It's just you're competing not only with Apple on the product of Apple Notes, but you're competing on the distribution and the platform, which Apple has access to. So that all being said, like this seems like a super solid product for a lot of people.
It's crazy. You do have to compete with Apple on that. Like I did feel a little scared. So, I film street interviews and I have a video guy and we're partners on it. And I had to convince him, I'm like, hey, this app just launched today and I've switched our entire business over to using it. Can you download it, please? And that's always a funny conversation, but we're using it now. I think it's worth it. You're so right though. Competing against Apple on distribution and platform is so hard. So your app has to be fantastic. It can't just be a little bit better than Apple Notes or Apple Reminders. And I think that's what they did here. It is 10x better than Apple Reminders, or like 100x more powerful. I think they did it here. I think they beat Apple Reminders times a million. So
yeah,
I'm a Superlist maxi. But Aaron, I want to hear about your app. I'm going to stop sharing this.
One more note I just wanted to, because I remember reading this in Aaron's newsletter now that you pointed out, is that the founders of Superlist are also have awesome backgrounds. Yeah. So I think one of them is an ex-Blinkist founder, and then the other one is the ex-Pitch founder.
Yeah, and one is the Wunderlist founder, which was sold to Microsoft, eventually wound down for Microsoft to do. So Wunderlist had almost like cult following among productivity nerds. I used Wunderlist for a long time. I loved it. It's actually why I kind of use Apple Notes now, because I hated Microsoft to do. And also on Superhuman, I only tried that out recently. So I'm 2 for 2 on apps with the word super in it.
It's a good word. I was reading this book. I hope you don't mind on this tangent, but that's what podcasts are about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I was reading Ogilvy on advertising. So David Ogilvy, like famous advertising guy, and he's like, don't sleep on the words that are used a lot, right? Don't just because a word like super or new, quote unquote, or simple words, like just because they're used a lot, like you don't have to go super unique sometimes. Sometimes a simple word like super that everybody understands is really powerful. So I think you're right. Like everybody understands Superhuman, everybody understands Superlist because of the super. Exactly. So more super apps.
I mean, it's like no hate to any startups there, but basic words are infinitely better than removing like all the vowels in a word, and pitching that as a name. So
yeah, like think about Tweet Hunter, right? And they launched on Product Hunt maybe a couple years ago, right? But you know what it is? It helps you hunt for tweets, find inspiration for tweets, and then schedule out your tweets. Like to me, I personally love that more than when an app tries to go with some fancy crazy name. Like I just read something that Gwyneth Paltrow she named her company Goop because some consultant told her just to add 2 O's in the middle of her initials because that's what like a bunch of tech companies were doing. So like you don't have to do that. You could just say what your app does. And like, I don't know, that's what Rajiv talks a lot about. Our CEO Rajiv talks a lot about that with taglines for Product Hunt. Just say what your product does. Stop saying superlatives. Stop like making it, fancy. Just say what the product does better than anybody else.
You just blew my mind. Today years old that I realized that Goop is 2 O's in the middle of Gwyneth Paltrow's name.
She just basically copied Google for her own name. And hey, it's working.
It worked. Like, I mean, if you were early enough as well, Jason, you could have gotten Jewel.
Jewel, I know. I could have been the Jewel that didn't get banned in the US. Do you still have Jewel in Ireland? Or like
we never
pods? You never had it.
No, it seems like that. America has too many banned ingredients to launch those kind of products over there.
Dude, it was a real problem here. They should not have ever launched that.
Another small tangent, but remember the whole lung problem that was going on in America where people were like dying? Like there was like a good amount of people dying.
That's been going on forever, brother.
That still hasn't. Not a single person in Europe has gotten
that. We just move on to a new product. Like it's not Jewel. Then now it's those like chewable. We were talking about
Zins. Yeah, the Zin revolution and the finance guys. They should launch on Product Hunt. Hey, if you run Zin, you should launch on Product Hunt because the finance bros will upvote you and drop some comments because they love you, man. They love the Zins.
Yeah, I don't even know what Zins are. Like, we don't have that here either.
They're just the chewing, the packets that you put in the nicotine patches or
they brought
nicotine pack. Yeah, that's really it. They just like made it trendy and cool,
Rebranded
and
it.
the finance
Yeah.
guys are like in love with it. Cool. So what app do you got for us, Aaron?
Yeah, I got like a pretty simple app. I will screen share the Product Hunt page because you can't really show it outside of like the right conditions. Cool. Okay, so this is Discharge. It's a pretty simple app, and it was lower down in the rankings for its day. But I remember, I think it was an engineer that described it as last in the leaderboard, first in my heart. And I think this sounds like a problem that like all of us have encountered. You know, you're in like some seriously deep focus work. Your battery might already be at 20%, and you're like, oh, whatever, I'll get 5 more minutes. You forget to look up, it gets to 1%, you're sprinting for the charger, running over every obstacle, boop, too late, your battery's gone dead. In today's modern age, it's not the worst thing in the world. Like back in the 90s, you would lose whatever you're working on, and the early 2000s. Nowadays, we have autosave and all these fantastical things, but it's still annoying. So, Discharge lives in your Mac menu bar, and it's obnoxious as a service is almost the best way I can describe it. So, if you can see here, it shows the battery status, and you can set like a critical battery level. I typically would go either 10 or 20%. 10% is like probably the lowest I would go. And from that point, it will start getting bigger and bigger on your screen, just this big percent and a border around it getting bigger. So your usable screen getting smaller and the number getting bigger until it's practically unusable and you have to charge it, plug your charger, not to save your laptop's battery, but just to get rid of this giant 1%.
I love it. I love everything about it. Like I will work until 1% and then get mad. I'm like, why did you die, laptop? It's like, oh no, it's because I'm an idiot who has like, ADHD and just super focused on my work and super lazy about getting upstairs and grabbing the charger. So I love it.
Yeah. The embarrassment that I have when I'm like starting a meeting and then I'm like, wait, I gotta grab my charger. It's just like
exactly. I also love how simple it is. It's like this guy just built it to solve his own problem. I bet
I'm pretty sure he mentions that, or maybe
like is it free?
No, it's $2.99.
Nice. I love it. It's simple. It's like simple iPhone days of like early iPhone when you would drink the beer and the lighter. Remember the lighter on the iPhone?
Oh my god, yeah.
It feels like that. Like, just a simple app, $2, and you use it, you don't use it, like whatever. I love it.
I just imagined a scenario that happened to this guy like one too many times. The maker's name is Pawan Dixit. So I imagine it happened just to Pawan one too many times, and he's like, screw this, and he's just making like a super simple app for himself. He's like, hey, I built this thing for me, maybe other people might like it.
That is the core root of makers, is you're solving a problem, right?
Yeah.
And you're solving your problem, which means the internet is huge, and you're solving a bunch of other people's problems too.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, and I think you can learn a lot from Product Hunt, right? You throw this app up and be like, do other people have this problem? And you can find out if the answer is yes. How many people have it? And this could be awesome side income for him as well. So I will say the only downside to this app is that it puts my husband out of a job, who loves to point out like, oh, you have 1% left. There's like always that one person in the relationship. There's one who lets their battery get to 1% and the other who's always keeping it charged. And I'm the former.
I am the former. I'm the one that gets pointed out. Yeah, we all are, which is why we need the app. There we go.
Yeah.
Request for the maker if you can make this for an iPhone app as well. I would love that, because the only thing that dies more than my computer is my phone. So
true.
Would love that.
Yeah. I kind of when my phone dies though, I'm a bit of a weirdo. I just like throw my phone to the side and like won't charge it for hours. I'm very much just like a laptop person. I keep my phone out of necessity for contact, and that's kind of pretty much it. Just like if it dies, it's no big deal. But if my laptop dies, oh god, I'm in trouble.
Dude, phone dies in New York, the wife assumes you're dead. That's that's the truth of
Yeah.
it.
Versus if it dies in Cork, the wife just assumes you're at a pub or something, I'm assuming.
Farming, minding the fields, tending to the cattle.
Exactly.
Hey listeners, I'm joined today by a special guest, Zeno Rocha, who is the founder of Resend, which just recently won the 2023 Golden Kitty Award for developer tools. If you're not familiar with Resend, Resend is a tool for developers to build, test, and deliver transactional emails at scale, and it has a particular focus on making sure your emails hit the right inbox. Today, I'm also joined by a few members of our Product Hunt team.
Hey everyone, I'm Sarah and excited to talk to Zeno today.
I'm Rajiv. I've been a guest a couple of times and they haven't kicked me off yet.
I'm Mike. I am the CTO at Product Hunt. It's my first time here and super excited to talk to Zeno.
Hey everyone, I'm Zeno. Super excited to be here. Yeah, can't wait to dive into all of this. It's going to be fun.
I will kind of circle back and repeat a little bit of what Aaron said here, but Resend is email for developers is actually the tagline that you used for your launch on Product Hunt. Resend launched on Product Hunt in August of 2023. You took second product of the month overall and won developer tool of the year. And I would love to hear just a little bit more from your perspective. Zeno, can you explain to me what Resend is?
Yeah, for sure. So Resend is this idea of what you described, like trying to rethink email sending from a developer's perspective. The reason why I started was like I've used all of these different tools like MailChimp and ConvertKit and Mailgun and SendGrid, like Postmark, all of those. And I've always felt like, oh, I wish this was built for me. It didn't feel that way. It felt like maybe it was built for product marketers or product managers, but not necessarily for me as an engineer. So that was the whole thought process. Like, how can we build the Stripe of email, the Vercel of email? How would that look like in 2023? We're still a very small team at Resend. We're like 6 people, and we're serving over 1,000 paying customers now, 69,000 users as of yesterday.
You're talking about a topic near and dear to my heart, which is email as a marketer. I'd love to hear a little bit more about like your product journey. How did you identify this space in the market, and what was your product journey to trying to fill that space?
It definitely started with my own pain. I like throughout the past 10 years, I've used all of these different tools and at different capacities too. At work, I remember we were serving McDonald's and they were having problems with emails going to spam. And at that time, I was a CPO at that company and I'm like, oh my gosh, how do I solve this? Right. And then for a side project, I was like, okay, I'm using MailChimp and then it's super expensive and doesn't really fit my side project budget. And then when I moved to another job, then also had this problem. So when I started diving deep into this, my understanding was that, oh, wow, like this is a space where there are a lot of competitors and they're very established, right? But they all started like around 2008, 2009, and they all have been acquired by now. So I very much believe in this technology cycle where every 10 years, the tools are being reinvented and this is a very healthy thing for the entire ecosystem. So I thought that, I think there's a space here for a new email platform.
I was just going to quickly jump in because it's not the sexiest thing in the world. I just want to say you actually did a pretty good job of making it look sexy on your product launch page. The graphics are great.
When we first launched like Resend, it was a landing page where there was no information about the product. And then there was that crazy Rubik's Cube rotating on the page. I very much value design, attention to detail. And I could say all of that. I could create like a missions page or a values page and say, hey, at Resend, we care about this, this, and that. Or I can look at my most value real estate in the web and demonstrate those values. And I feel like that's what people get when they go to Resend is like, oh, this is different. Like there's a level of technical excellence. There's a level of attention to detail. The only way for you to get into the waitlist, like you couldn't click a button, you had to press a key in your keyboard. And for us was about sending this secret message of, hey, I know that as a developer, you love all these keyboard shortcuts. This is a product for you.
Can we dig in a little bit into what those problems are that you're solving for developers?
Yeah. So we can think about the journey of sending an email. It probably starts with a designer making this beautiful email template, and then they hand off to the developer, right? When that developer opens Figma, they're like, okay, I'm going to start implementing this. And they quickly realize that, oh, building an email is very different from building web apps. Like I have all these little hacks that I need to do. I need to use tables. I can't do rounded corners. Like it feels like the web in 1995. Like you would need to build things that are compatible with every single browser. So we started with that. And that was a piece where we were building Resend, like the API to send emails to the transportation layer. But we are like, we're just going to come out of nowhere with this. Like, I don't think this is a great way to launch something. So we actually started building this other project alongside called React Email. And that was a very good way to solve this initial problem of like, let's make email as modern as web development is today. So let's use things like Tailwind, which developers love, Next.js, React. That's what they really want to be building with. So that was a great, like I always think about storytelling, and that was a great way to kick off that journey. We're like, here's a tool for you. This is free. And we're helping you build those templates. And that project blew off. We launched in December 2023. I think we have like more than 10,000 GitHub stars now. And then in January, right after, we announced Resend for the first time. So the story follows the process of sending an email, because once you're done with that template, now using React Email, which is way modern, better, easier for you to use. So we fix that problem first. And then once you have the template, what do you do with that? Now you need to send it. So then Resend is a natural progression to that process. And then after you send, there's way more stuff that happens, right? Now you need observability. Was the email sent or not? Was it delivered or not? Did it get to spam or not? Did it bounce? Is someone marking as spam? So we kind of tried to understand what's the user life cycle. And then for each part of that life cycle, approaching that maybe with one product or maybe with different projects, and maybe with one go-to-market or a different go-to-market motion.
I want to get a little technical here. So from what I know, emails kind of like video calls, they're dragons. It's like ugly. It's like shocking. Like what are some challenges like to sending email reliably at scale that might really surprise people?
Yeah, so many, man. And I totally agree with you. Like I come from a developer tools background, and email wasn't my domain knowledge. And I think if it was, I would never start Resend. If I knew all those challenges, I would be like, oh no, this is way too complicated. So I think there's something to be said here to other makers and creators, that being naive is actually a good thing when you're starting, because then you deal with those issues as you go. But the challenge that we face at scale are insane. Like we have customers that are sending 3 million emails a month, and they need a very different infrastructure than folks that are sending a low volume. In terms of queuing, in terms of sending different batches at times, you don't want to blast like all of your users at once. A lot of email is about how do you do everything differently than an attacker would do, like an abuser. We fight abuse a ton at Resend. Like there's so many people trying to send phishing emails, spam, every single day. It's crazy. So a lot of what we do is like learning the abuse patterns and then enforcing exactly the opposite to guarantee better deliverability. And the email industry keeps evolving in terms of what are the authentication methods that are required. Like today, or I guess it was yesterday even, that Google and Yahoo Mail, they made some changes regarding email deliverability, where they require you to have a DMARC uh, DNS record set, and you need things like SPF and DKIM to be passing. There's this new protocol called BIMI, where there's a verified check mark on your email, and once you have it, your deliverability improves tremendously. So there are all these things that most people don't know because they're not in the email world, and I get it. I didn't know them too. So we try to make that built in so that you don't have to worry about that.
So I love the bottoms up approach. Do you have a sense of why email was kind of in this dark corner and was left behind?
There's something about when technology is at the intersection of two different fields that makes it harder for people to navigate. So what I love about Figma, for example, as a business, right? They started serving designers and they built an amazing product for that audience. And then, like, it used to be the case where as an engineer or as a product manager, I would never go to Photoshop or to Sketch, right? Like that, those are the tools that designers would use. And then I would just get a screenshot that I would be, making annotations on. And they were able to put everybody in the same room and then fill that gap, right? I feel like that's very much the case for email, where talk to companies that they're very big and they have a team only for marketing, a team only for engineering, and they use different tools. And this team that I talked to didn't even know what was the tool that the other team used. So it's very much like these silos. Like I'm sure you experienced that, where you sign up for a service and the welcome email looks completely different than this other email that you get later, right? We're definitely starting with one piece of that, but I feel like we could bring those together in the same place.
Sometimes you see people launch these really simple products and then they just start to get more and more complex as you start building things in or discovering roadblocks that you didn't expect in the space. Is that something that you've approached where you're like, okay, I see how we kind of got to this point in the space? And if you have to think about, how you're doing things differently.
Totally. And like this value of simplicity and removing friction is something that is super close to my heart. My frustration with those other tools, one of them was like, I had to, like, the moment I sign up, I had to go and fill this huge form telling what's my expected volume, what is my domain, what is the reason why I'm sending these emails. And then I would submit the form, and then 3 days later, they'll tell me, oh, you were approved. Now you can start sending, or no. And I'm like, this is so against everything I believe. Like, the moment I sign up, I need to experience the value of the product in 10 seconds, not in 3 days. Because as a developer, I have very limited time. This is this is a Sunday afternoon where my wife is cooking and my daughter is running around the living room, and I'm just like, oh, let me play with this API. And if I can't perceive the value in 10 seconds, then I'm just going to close and forget about it. Or I can be like, oh, this is interesting. Let me tell my coworkers Monday morning and tell them like how amazing this was and how easy it was to set it up. So a lot of what we do is like remove friction at every single step of the way. And we want people to feel like, oh, okay, nice. I was able to accomplish this task. So I remember our onboarding flow. In the beginning, we had like 5 different steps. And then we changed to 4 and then 3. And now we have 2. And we're like, oh, how can we make it 1? So I think it's a constant process. Stripe is a company that has this culture where they run friction logs every now and then for their own products. So you sit down, you're like, oh, let me perform a task. How long does it take? What are the problems? Especially in a team setting, what I love doing is like whenever there's a new team member, like you go through this process for like different flows and you document every little friction you found, because there's something really special about that new, like that, those fresh eyes on that problem, right? Because 2 weeks later, they won't have that anymore. So you have a very small window to capture that feedback and then it's gone.
I can shift gears just slightly. I've thought about it a lot as you're talking about positioning and go-to market strategy. Resend is a YC company. It'd be great if you could tell me a little bit about your journey.
Yeah, YC was super insane. I remember we applied just as an exercise of like, let's just, because the application itself, it's going to inform a lot of what you're building. We submitted the application, zero expectation. And then we got the call of like, oh, we want to talk to you. And I was so like afraid and desperate. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like, what if it works? And also, what if it doesn't work? Like, is getting into IC the thing that will make us quit our jobs and pursue this full time or not? So I remember when, like, during that moment, that 1 week before the interview, I'm like, I need that answer. So I talked to like a couple of friends that they got investors in the past, and I'm like, let me pitch to them. Let me see if I could raise money from them. And then I had a couple of these calls. And then those people are like, oh yeah, I would put like 40K on this idea. I'm like, okay, now I have the confidence, because even if I don't get into IC, I'm going to make this. And that's how I approached the interview with them. We will love to go through IC because of X, Y, and Z. We feel like this is a perfect match. But even if we don't get in, we're going to pursue that idea. We're very confident about that. And I feel like the power dynamics shift when you come from that direction of like, I don't need you necessarily to pursue this, but if we come along with it, will be amazing, right? So we got in, and then I was like even more afraid and even more desperate. I'm like, oh my gosh, like we're going to enter this program, and there are 250 companies in the same batch. So it's wild, right? Like it's so insane. And for me, it was like, if we're joining this, we're not coming to be the 100th best company or the 10th best company. We're coming in to be the first one. We got to go really hard. And that means things like a good .com domain. For me, that was non-negotiable. I need a strong .com domain, because this will signal that we are here to stay, that we are not joking around. And I remember paying from my own pocket like 25K in the end, because I felt like so much conviction that we need a strong name and we need strong design. And the first few weeks of the program was me trying to sell to my batchmates, which was completely the wrong thing to do. Like you quickly realize that getting insights from other people that are going through the journey with you, sharing the same struggles, being vulnerable, that's something that is very hard to be with people that you don't know. But I've learned so much from other founders, and we still very much sell and have a lot of YC companies. I think today we have 110 YC companies already using Resend. So it's definitely a part of our strategy to be embedded into that ecosystem, to be helping that and be participating in that community. Because we've seen that playbook work for Brex and so many other companies, right? So it's definitely been interesting going through that. It was pretty wild.
From my experience, YC is the best collection of advice for, let's say, like the 90th percentile companies in any area. But what's really helpful about the time with the partners, like the specific advice, is you can get advice on areas where it's really key to your business and you as a founding team are exceptional or unusual in some way. Is there any advice that stands out that was very specific to you and the business and maybe very different from like the conventional wisdom?
There were good advice and also bad advice. We, like in the beginning, we put the landing page and everything was behind a waitlist. So our growth was super small. We were growing very conservative because we were not confident in the product. I remember our partner pushing us like, you gotta ship this, you gotta release it, you gotta launch, because every single day that you're within that wait list, people are now like getting colder and colder and colder. And then the moment you decide to launch, you're only going to capture a small amount of people on that wait list. And she was right. Like we had 10,000 people on the wait list, and I think we converted like maybe a half by the time we released. You can still do a wait list. I think it's a very effective model, but you got to be really thoughtful about how much time you spend there. And the other advice that I would also get was, so I came to this one partner and he said, you spend too much time on design. And I was so crushed by that because he was right. I do spend an awful amount of time on design that maybe I shouldn't be spending that much. And that got me thinking, and I'm like, we got to change the way we operate. Maybe this is the wrong way. And my conclusion after thinking a lot was like, no, I trust that this is the way to go, because if we do exactly what our competitors are doing, which is crappy design, no attention to detail, we're not going to stand out. So I'm like, I'm not going to do this. And if that means that instead of 5 million in revenue, we're only going to have 1 million in revenue, I prefer to have 1 million in revenue because I want to sign up for this service to use myself, and I'm using for my projects, and I want to have a good time, and I want to feel like, yeah, this is what I want to use. So I think you got to be really careful with what are you listening to. You also have to listen to your gut, because you got to understand like what's a core value for you. Maybe for some folks would be like performance. It needs to be extremely fast, or maybe it's something else, right? But that's what shapes you as a company, you as an individual, as a leader.
I love that example because for most companies, the vast majority of companies, they'd be right. But in this case, you identified this was related to a core value of yours. And I think that's another thing about advice. If you're taking advice well, you're not just taking it in to do it or not to do it. It can actually confirm or increase your conviction about something that's important to you.
Interesting.
I think that's all we have time for today. Am I right? Thanks so much, Zeno, for joining us. Congratulations again on the incredible Golden Kitty win. I'm wishing you all the success in 2024 and beyond. And thank you as well to my Pod Hunt co-hosts today, Rajiv, Mike, and Sarah. So on the count of 3, let's just all say goodbye, because I want to bye together, because I want to try this. So 1, 2, 3. Bye. No.
Bye.
Bye.